Dr. Binoy J. Paul will be speaking to us about these particular issues. And to chair the session, we have our very own Professor of Medicine, Dr. Sheila Kurian. I request Dr. Sheila to take over the session. Ma'am.
Yes. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the next session that is rheumatological diseases in pregnancy. As Sven said, nowadays, not infrequently, we come across pregnant females with rheumatological diseases because of the predominance of rheumatological diseases in females in the reproductive age group and because of the improvement in the management also. So, as physicians, we should be aware of the changes that pregnancy can bring into the rheumatological diseases and vice versa. We should also know the drugs that can be given during pregnancy as well as during breastfeeding. To talk about all these things, we have Dr. Binoy Jaipal, who requires no introduction to this forum because he is an alumni of Kottayam Medical College. And he was working as professor of medicine in Government Medical College, Calicut. But now he is working in KMCT Medical College, Mumbai. He is associated with various rheumatological organizations and has received multiple awards, including the prestigious B.C. McElroy Oration, Dr. Epen Samuel Memorial Award, etc. To his credit, he has got several national and international papers. So, I invite Dr. Binoy to present the topic of rheumatological diseases in pregnancy. Over to Binoy.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
Respected Chairperson, Dr. Sheila, other senior colleagues and friends. At the outset, I thank Professor Sangamitra and the Department of Medicine for giving me this opportunity to talk on rheumatic diseases in pregnancy. As you are aware, pregnancy has a direct influence on the course of various rheumatological diseases. At the same time, the outcome of pregnancy is modified by the underlying rheumatological illness the mother is suffering from. Moreover, some of the drugs we use to treat serious rheumatological illness can adversely affect the fetus. So the treating physician and the obstetrician should be aware of these complex interactions so that rheumatological disorders can be diagnosed early, the couple can be effectively counseled, pregnancy can be properly planned, complications can be anticipated or prevented, and most effective therapy with the least harm to the fetus and the mother can be instituted. The immunological changes in pregnancy is quite complex. The uteroplacental unit act as a unique immunoregulatory organ which modify the immune system of the mother in such a way that it should tolerate the fetus. And the fetus can be considered as a semi-allograft with 50% of the genetic material coming from the father. So in order to prevent fetal rejection, there are certain immunological changes that are happening in the mother's body. The main one is suppression of the cell-mediated immunity and stimulation of the humoral or the autoantibody-mediated immunity. So those autoimmune disorders, which are predominantly due to a dysfunction of the cell-mediated immunity, usually improve during pregnancy. The best example is rheumatoid arthritis. Autoimmune neurological problems like multiple sclerosis may also improve in pregnancy due to the suppression of the cell-mediated immunity. On the other hand, the autoantibody-mediated rheumatic diseases like SLE or progressive systemic sclerosis usually worsen during pregnancy. And this is mainly by the change in the cytokine profile from Th1 to Th2 in pregnancy compared to the normal stage. Now we have almost 3 types of rheumatic diseases. One group is improving during pregnancy. The best example is rheumatoid arthritis. Those are unchanged disease activity during pregnancy like spondyloarthropathy, like ankylosing spondylitis, psoriatic arthritis, Rhesus, etc. And we have rheumatic diseases that worsen during pregnancy. The most important example is SLE, antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, mixed connective tissue disease, scleroderma, and even rheumatic fever. And mechanical problems can also produce worsening in pregnancy like back pain or a carpal tunnel syndrome. Now coming to the individual diseases. In rheumatoid arthritis, as I have told, around 50 to 75% cases, there is amelioration of the disease activity. The improvement usually starts in the first trimester onwards. The arthritis returns postpartum 6 weeks to 6 months in more than 95% of cases. Women with negative anti-CCP and rheumatoid factor are more likely to improve during pregnancy. So seronegative rheumatoid usually improve pregnancy much better than a seropositive one. And there will be same fate in the subsequent pregnancies. If they have improved in the 6 weeks, they will improve like that. If they have recurrence, the same fate you can expect in the next pregnancy. And the causes of improvement, I have already told, there is depression of the cell-mediated immunity. Other minor factors like increasing the cortisol, rise in the T regulator cells, and the maternal-fetal HLA mismatch. All these contribute, but the major one is the depression of the cell-mediated immunity and the change in the Th1 to Th2 cytokine profile. Now coming to SLE, lupus activity may vary with individual patient, but become more active in majority, around 50 to 65% of cases. There is some increase in the disease activity. Fortunately, these flares are more common in the second and third trimester and first 6 weeks after delivery. And most of these flares are mild, involving skin and joint, and the patient may come with increasing joint pain or a skin rash. So mild flares are more common. But in around less than 20% of cases, there can be severe flares involving the major systems like kidney, nervous system, blood, serositis, and even arthritis. So severe flares occur in less than 20%, and they may present with fetal loss, miscarriages, intrauterine growth retardation, preeclamptic toxemia, and prematurity. Pregnancy outcome is poor if the conception occur in active disease. So what are the factors one should look for when you see a pregnant SLE patient? The risk factors are presence of an active disease, they may do badly. Major organ involvement, especially the kidney, pulmonary arterial hypertension, interstitial lung disease, cardiac involvement. Presence of antiphospholipid antibody which produce many other complications. And a positive anti-Rho or anti-LAV where the fetus can develop congenital heart block. So these are the major risk factors one should always look for. The risk of lupus pregnancy in the mother are disease flare, preeclampsia, maternal thrombosis, bleeding, and infection. And in the fetus, this can produce miscarriages, fetal loss, preterm birth, intrauterine growth retardation, neonatal lupus, which is very uncommon, and stillbirth or neonatal deaths. And the pregnancy loss, if you look around, miscarriages occur in 20 to 25% of the patients. Premature birth, the incidence is around 6-fold higher than a healthy woman. And these are the risk factors of having a premature birth, like active disease, hypertension, giving high dose steroids. And another problem is differentiating lupus nephritis flares from a preeclamptic toxemia, because in both conditions, you may get hypertension, edema, proteinuria, and worsening renal function. And it will be difficult to differentiate whether it's a PET or a flare of the lupus nephritis. The differentiation is important. The immunosuppressant like azathioprine and steroid are usually used in disease flares of SLE, but it can worsen the hypertension in preeclamptic toxemia. So the clinical point to say that this patient is having an active lupus rather than PET, or one is if the patient is having a true arthritis, cutaneous vasculitis, presence of oral ulcers, and the hypertension and proteinuria developing before 20 weeks, think about lupus nephritis flare, because in PET, this occur after 20 weeks, hypertension and proteinuria. And examining doing the investigations like urinary sediments, you get active urinary sediments, RBCs, WBC, cast, and hematuria, while in PET, you get only proteinuria. And the uric acid levels are usually normal in contrast to PET. Thrombocytopenia is more marked, complements levels are reduced. dsDNA titer will progressively increase in majority if it's active disease. So these points will help you to differentiate an SLE from preeclamptic SLE flare from preeclamptic toxemia. Antiphospholipid antibody syndrome is a very big topic. All the three antiphospholipid antibodies, like anticardiolipin, lupus anticoagulant, and beta-2 glycoprotein 1, their presence is definitely bad in patients with during pregnancy, which is known to almost all of you. Patients present with recurrent abortion, fetal distress, intrauterine growth retardation, prematurity, and there is an increased chance of preeclamptic toxemia in antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. Now, coming to the treatment of SLE in pregnancy, our aims are to control the symptoms and disease activity, watch for any major organ involvement, anticipate maternal or fetal complications. The high-risk lupus pregnancy should be managed by a team. The antenatal monitoring and management are very, very important. A multidisciplinary care is often needed. You should do a basic assessment regarding the disease activity, organ involvement, and you may need a serial ultrasound to know the fetal well-being. And a timely delivery, sometimes by cesarean section, may be necessary in this patient. So the control of the symptoms is mainly by drugs like hydroxychloroquine, corticosteroids in lower doses, and immunosuppressives like azathioprine and calcineurin inhibitors like cyclosporin and tacrolimus. They are also safe in pregnancy. So the drugs that are compactable or safe in pregnancy are paracetamol, low-dose aspirin, shock-tacking NSAIDs up to 32 weeks, hydroxychloroquine and sulfasalazine. Colchicine is also safe in pregnancy. We may use it in serositis like pericarditis. Prednisolone is safe. It won't cross the placenta unless you are giving it more than 20 milligrams per day. Azathioprine is safe. Calcineurin inhibitors are safe. IVIG and short-acting anti-TNF agents like etanercept and satralizumab are safe. Those are contraindicated are cyclophosphamide, methotrexate, mycophenolate, leflunomide, rituximab, JAK inhibitors like tofacitinib and belimumab. These are the drugs that are not compactable during pregnancy. So if you look at the NSAIDs in pregnancy, please use them only if absolutely indicated. Prophylactic withdrawal is not necessary. Only when the patient becomes pregnant, you can stop it. Short-acting NSAIDs like ibuprofen and naproxen are relatively safe. No studies on the newer NSAIDs like Coxib. Discontinue at least 6 weeks before time because of the risk of neonatal bleeding and the premature closure of the ductus. So up to 32 weeks, you can give it safely if necessary. But try to use ibuprofen or naproxen. Hydroxychloroquine suppresses the disease activity in RA. It prevents the flares in SLE. It reduces the antiphospholipid antibody. And the fetal retinopathy is extremely rare. And it's considered as a very safe drug for pregnancy. Steroids, low-dose prednisolone is safe, but dexamethasone and betamethasone will cross the placenta and may be useful if you want to give the steroids in a fetus. Otherwise, low-dose prednisolone can be given, which is safe. The chance of cleft palate, neonatal cataract, and growth retardation are extremely rare. In fact, it is the major factor for the improved survival of lupus patients, even in pregnancy from the last 70 years. Watch for maternal side effects like hypertension, diabetes, osteoporosis, avascular necrosis, rather than problems in the fetus. In breastfeeding mothers, giving less than 20 milligram prednisolone per day is safe, and you should wait for at least 4 hours before the next feed if you are giving more than 20 milligram. Now, the active lupus may require higher dose of steroid as the pregnancy advances, and steroid stress coverage may be needed during labor, and continue previous oral dose for the next 2 months before reducing it to further, even if the disease is inactive. There is no prophylactic role for steroids. Azathioprine at a standard dose of less than 2.5 milligram per kilogram per day is safe in pregnancy, no increase in congenital abnormality, because azathioprine is a inert compound that should be converted to 6-mercaptopurine. And 6-mercaptopurine will not cross the placenta, and the fetal liver lack the enzyme inosinate phosphorylase, which convert azathioprine to 6-mercaptopurine. So because of this reason, azathioprine is considered as a relatively safe drug in pregnancy. And it is often life-saving even in severe lupus nephritis. Cyclosporin and tacrolimus are relatively safe immunosuppressives. Very small amount may cross the placenta at higher doses, but can cause small for gestational age and premature delivery. Otherwise, it is also given in pregnancy nowadays. Cyclophosphamide is a major teratogen and absolutely contraindicated, but after 28 weeks, sometimes to save the life of the mother, cyclophosphamide is tried nowadays. Mycophenolate crosses the placenta. Fetal malformation rates are high. One should substitute with azathioprine before going for pregnancy. Coming to anti-rheumatic drugs during breastfeeding, short-acting NSAIDs are safe. Steroid secretion is negligible, as I have already told. Less than 20 milligram prednisolone is safe. Hydroxychloroquine and sulfasalazine are relatively safe. Cyclophosphamide and methotrexate are absolutely contraindicated. The role of azathioprine. Azathioprine is a safe drug during pregnancy, but small amount is excreted in the breast milk. So it was considered as a contraindication. But nowadays, recent studies show that if you give less than 100 milligram per day in a breastfeeding mother, it may not produce much problem to the infant. So you can try azathioprine if absolutely indicated, even in a breastfeeding mother. And the biologicals are large protein molecules which are not excreted in the breast milk and are considered safe. Now coming to contraception in SLE, estrogen-containing contraceptives can cause exacerbation. Intrauterine devices are notorious to produce infections and menorrhagia, while progesterone-only pills and mechanical barriers are safe in SLE for contraception. Coming to progressive systemic sclerosis, the skin and joint symptoms may worsen. There can be increase in the gastroesophageal reflex. Pregnancy is usually uneventful otherwise. There is increased chance of cardiopulmonary and renal problems in the first 3 years of onset of the disease. So even with the progressive systemic sclerosis can have uncomplicated successful pregnancies provided the disease is stable and the organ damage is mild. So delay the pregnancy till the disease gets stabilized. Usually it takes around 3 years. And one of the problem is the scleroderma renal crisis. Frequent BP monitoring is necessary. It's an extremely uncommon complication, but this is one situation where you may have to use AC inhibitors to save the mother, even though it is a contraindicated drug in pregnancy. Coming to rheumatic fever, nowadays we are not seeing much cases. First appears or often recurs in pregnancy. Arthritis, as you know, is asymmetrical, migratory with large joint involvement. Sometimes you may get patient with severe heart failure. Chorea gravidarum is the chorea occurring in pregnancy, can lead to preterm labor, fetal loss, and maternal death. And the treatment is mainly steroids. In the next few minutes, I will try to answer some of the frequently asked questions. These questions are often asked to me by my obstetricians and physician colleagues. The first FAQ is, what is the effect of rheumatic disorders on fertility? Conception time may be prolonged. Reduced sexual drive and pain may be causing problems. There can be some ovulation dysfunction. So because of this reason, many patients with rheumatic diseases, the conception time may be prolonged. Very active disease may sometimes reduce the fertility, especially in SLE and progressive systemic sclerosis. But more often the drugs which we use like cyclophosphamide can cause ovarian failure or reduce fertility. When should you plan for the next pregnancy? The disease activity must be controlled for more than 1 year. Minimum requirement of steroids, adequate control of blood pressure, and in systemic sclerosis, you should have a lung checkup and renal functions to rule out any interstitial lung disease or renal problems. And in SLE, apart from the serum creatinine, look for antiphospholipid and the anti-Rho antibodies. When should you stop the drugs if planning for pregnancy? Methotrexate should be stopped 3 months prior to conception. Leflunomide will linger in the body for more than 2 years because of the enterohepatic circulation. So it is better to avoid if the patient has not completed the family, or you have to wait for 2 years, Or you can use a cholestyramine washout to wash out the drug from the enterohepatic circulation with cholestyramine. Now, NSAIDs can be stopped immediately on consumption. Till that time, you can continue. If pregnancy occurs while taking cyclophosphamide, methotrexate, or leflunomide, it is better to do an MTP. What is the role of pre-conception counseling, which is known to all of you? If the patient has got a rheumatic heart disease, social problems, rheumatoid, you have to talk about the teratogenicity of drugs, and you have to change from methotrexate to hydroxychloroquine or sulfasalazine. Disease activity and severity should be assessed. The social aspects are important. Then regarding SLE, you should look for any renal, lung, or CNS involvement. You have to look at the complement levels and anti-dsDNA titer to find out whether the disease is inactive. So you have to do few investigations. And in scleroderma, as I have told, it is better to wait for 3 years after the diagnosis. What happened to the disease in pregnancy, which I have already told? Rheumatoid arthritis usually improve. Scleroderma and SLE will flare up. Acute rheumatic fever, the recurrence is high, but fortunately we are seeing lesser and lesser number of patients. What additional investigations are recommended during pregnancy? You have to look for any systemic involvement, cardiac, renal, pulmonary, or severe thrombocytopenia or other hematological problems. You have to do an immunological profile and look for any antibodies related to that particular disease which is suggesting an active disease. How to monitor disease activity in pregnancy? Look for clinical clues. Your ESR will not be useful because ESR will be otherwise raised. Always do investigations to assess any systemic involvement. Can we use NSAIDs in pregnancy? Avoid as far as possible. Use only absolutely indicated. Short-acting NSAIDs are preferred. Do not use in the last 6 weeks, which I have already told. What about steroids? They are relatively safe in pregnancy. Fetal malformation rates are not high. No increase in the cleft palate or cleft lip. If you want to give it for the mother, give prednisolone. If you want to give it in a fetus like a lung maturation and etc., you can use dexamethasone. When should you think about premature termination of pregnancy? Only in a patient with SLE and complete heart block. It is often done by cesarean section. Otherwise, the indications are mainly obstetric. As I have already told, the indications of cesarean are usually obstetrics. When there is a severe hip involvement in RA or SLE, where there may be difficulty for a vaginal delivery, you may have to do a cesarean and should always discuss with the anesthetist about the cervical spine involvement. And what are the reasons for postpartum flare-up? All these diseases will usually flare, whether RA or from SLE, both will flare up during postpartum because of the elevated pro-inflammatory prolactin, decrease in the endogenous cortisol level, changes back to the cytokine profile from Th2 to Th1, changes in the neuroendocrine axis. All these cause a postpartum flare-up. Are the anti-rheumatic drugs safe during breastfeeding? Short-acting NSAIDs are safe. Steroid secretion is negligible if you are giving prednisolone. Azathioprine, cyclophosphamide, and methotrexate are contraindicated. I have included azathioprine in this group. Now it is shifting to the other group of sulfasalazine, hydroxychloroquine, which are relatively safe. And because of the lack of time, I am not going to any case vignettes. Can I take another 10 minutes? Otherwise, we will stop here because we are already late.
Please, sir, you can take.
I thought I will discuss 1 or 2 cases because I have an array of cases with me. This is the story of a 24-year-old housewife who had symmetrical polyarthritis in the proximal interphalangeal joint, metacarpophalangeal joint, 2 months after the first delivery. And she had a high ESR positive rheumatoid factor seen by a physician and started on disease-modifying agents because of the diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. In fact, she was started on hydroxychloroquine and 7.5 milligram prednisolone per day. But the patient has got incomplete relief even 1 year after the delivery and with the drugs. She was seen by another orthopedic surgeon who started her on leflunomide 10 milligram daily. In between, she developed some episcleritis, and then an ophthalmologist was seen, and local steroid was applied. This is the episcleritis, nodular episcleritis is very classical of rheumatoid. In fact, she only referred the patient to me, and that is the time when I saw she had still arthritis in spite of leflunomide. She was lactating. Leflunomide is actually contraindicated. So I asked her to stop the drug and added methotrexate. And with methotrexate and leflunomide together, she had a marked improvement. And slowly we could reduce leflunomide and steroids, and it was tapered off. But she had a severe flare-up. This time a higher dose of methotrexate was given along with steroids, and the patient went into remission. And she was taking methotrexate happily along with folic acid. And she was asking, can I have one more child now? My first child is now 3 years old. The problem is that the patient is presently taking methotrexate. She had leflunomide 1 year back. The leflunomide will linger in the body for more than 2 years. That is the study is saying. So when you're planning the pregnancy, we have done a cholestyramine washout. The dose is 8 grams sachet, 3 times daily for 11 days to wash out the leflunomide. Methotrexate was stopped. Patient was started on hydroxychloroquine and sulfasalazine, and we waited for 3 months. She became pregnant 5 months after doing changing from methotrexate. The disease was inactive during pregnancy. So we have reduced and tapered all the drugs, including hydroxychloroquine and sulfasalazine, because she was in complete remission. And she had a normal vaginal delivery, but the arthritis relapsed exactly 2 months after delivery, the same fate as the first pregnancy. So she was again restarted on hydroxychloroquine and sulfasalazine. There was no control over the disease activity. The child is more than 1 year old. So I asked her, why can't you stop breastfeeding so that I can restart methotrexate? The husband was also not very keen. He was asking any other options. So I suggested biologics, even though it is little expensive. And she was started on etanercept biosimilar 50 milligram weekly, because the biologics are large molecules. They are not excreted in the breast milk. So she came after 1 month, and the patient improved markedly. And she was taking this biologics 50 milligram etanercept weekly. But after 4 months, she came back with an urgent appointment and informed that she is now 12 weeks pregnant. And she was taking etanercept throughout. Is it safe to continue pregnancy? That is what she was asking. So if you look at the literature, anti-TNF and anakinra are safe in pregnancy, but the other biologics, there are not much enough studies on that. So, but etanercept is a safe drug in pregnancy, especially because it's a short-acting agent. You have to stop rituximab 12 months prior, tocilizumab and abatacept 3 months prior. But you can continue the anti-TNF agents and anakinra up to conception, and if necessary, you can continue during pregnancy. So she was going for remission, so we stopped etanercept. Her ultrasound at 4th month and 6 months were normal. She had a normal delivery, and 2 months later, she again relapsed. Exactly the same fate as the previous pregnancy. So you may have to titrate, change, or add drugs according to the needs of the patient in that case. I will stop with one more case. This is the story of a Rayhana, 26-year-old lady. I have seen her 16 years back, 2004. She was asymptomatic, married 7.5 years back. Husband was treated for oligospermia. She already had an abortion at 2 months, so it's a precious pregnancy. She became pregnant again, but the routine sonology, the sonologist found that she had a fetus with severe bradycardia. Fetal heart rate was 78 at 28 weeks of pregnancy. And they have done a fetal echo, which showed that the atrial rate is 129 and the ventricular rate is 70 to 89. The atrioventricular dissociation is present with moderate pericardial effusion, and gave an impression that it's a congenital complete heart block with pericardial effusion. So she was worked up. Her hemoglobin was little low, ESR was 140. Other investigation, including the renal function, were normal. She has a mild microcytic hypochromic anemia. She had a ultrasound which showed a fetal heart rate of 78 with minimal pericardial effusion of the fetal heart. ANA was positive. It was done by ELISA at that time, and it was anti-dsDNA was negative. And at that time, I was asked to see this patient. And the ANA IF I have repeated, which showed a spectral pattern. Antiphospholipid antibodies were negative. Beta-2 glycoprotein 1 was not done at that time. That is why anticardiolipin and lupus anticoagulant only. It was in 2004. And the complement levels were within normal limits. And this was a ANA profile, old slide. You can see the SSA native, anti-Rho and anti-La, all are 3+ positive, and the anti-centromere antibody was also 2+ positive. But here, so whether it is an SLE, it is an asymptomatic mother. She had detected to have complete heart block in the fetus. She has ANA in the spectral pattern, Rho and La are positive. But if you look at the antibody-associated complete heart block, neonatal lupus is considered as an important cause. Maternal Rho and La antibodies are seen in this patient in 95%. There is a high affinity for fetal conduction system by these antibodies, leading to inflammation and fibrosis of the fetal conduction system. And the common causes are SLE, Sjogren syndrome, mixed connective tissues, and even undifferentiated connective tissue disease harboring these antibodies. So if our patient is having SLE, she has no arthritis, rash, or other symptoms of lupus. Her anti-dsDNA and anti-Smith are negative. She is negative for antiphospholipid antibody. Nothing to say that this is SLE. Is it Sjogren syndrome? She has no dry eyes or dry mouth, no parotid or salivary enlargement, no arthritis, Raynaud's, lymphadenopathy, or other clinical features. Her Schimmer's test has been done, which is negative, but she has positive SSA and SSB, apart from the spectral ANE. So finally, we can. So we consider that this is undifferentiated connective tissue disease. So if you look at the undifferentiated connective tissue disease, there is a big study on the antibody follow-up antibody-associated complete heart block. There is a large study of 55 mothers and children up to 20 years were followed up. At that time, they found that during the childbirth, 29 had SLE, 15% has Sjogren, 19 had undifferentiated connective tissue disease, 40% are asymptomatic, nearly half developed connective tissue disease on follow-up for 5 years. So our patient was probably in this 19% group, undifferentiated connective tissues and harboring this antibody. So we had a discussion with our cardiologist also, and we started on dexamethasone 4 milligram OD, because some of the books says salbutamol can be given to increase the fetal heart rate. The serial ultrasound showed the pericardial effusion came down. The complete heart block was persisting, but there was some improvement in the fetal heart rate. There was no intrauterine growth retardation, and she had a lower segment cesarean section and 32 weeks. This is the child and the mother, and you can see the ECG showing the complete heart block. And she was seen by the pediatric cardiologist at Amrita Institute and suggested a pacemaker, but the parents were not willing. But the problem didn't stop there. The patient came back, she became pregnant again. The risk of complete heart block in a mother with anti-Ra, anti-La positivity is only 2.2 to 5%. But the risk on recurrence is around 20%, and the neonatal mortality is around 15%. But there is no role for prophylactic dexamethasone. So we continued. She is already on hydroxychloroquine, which we continued, and serial monitoring of the fetal growth and heart rate has been done. There was no problem, and she had a normal vaginal delivery at 38 weeks. And this is the infant at that time in 2007. But the problem didn't stop there. After 2 weeks, the parents brought this infant to me and told that there is some lesions developing. This was annular erythematous lesion seen over the face, scalp, and the trunk. And this was looking like a cutaneous lupus. We had a discussion with our dermatologist also. This is photosensitive, and there is passive transfer of the anti-Rho and anti-La antibody causing this. Usually manifests 2 to 3 weeks after birth and usually disappear 6 months, within 6 months, and there is no scarring and requires only little topical steroids. So with the topical steroids, the child become better. This is also a female child. 1 year later, she came with the bleeding gums and ecchymotic patches. At that time, her platelet count was very low, 24,000 with severe thrombocytopenia. So we started her on steroids and azathioprine. Patient was under regular follow-up. She was on azathioprine, hydroxychloroquine, and prednisolone, and she was doing fairly well. And came for a checkup after 2 years, and she revealed that she became pregnant that time. So the chance of complete heart block, if the patient already having 2 neonatal lupus, is around 33%. This is from a book. 3% in the first pregnancy, 13% in the second, and 33% in the third pregnancy. And this is the new ANA profile. You can see all the antibodies are strongly positive, 3+. SSA native, Rho and La, all are positive. She was asked to continue hydroxychloroquine and azathioprine. Prednisolone was changed to dexamethasone. Adding a carbuncle on kyphosis, she was bitten by a stray dog and she became 6 months pregnant. The problem is it was a class 3 bite. She was given human rabies immunoglobulin and advised to take an anti-rabies vaccine. And the patient husband came to me and told that this has happened. Patient is pregnant. She has a connective tissue disease and she is on steroids. So I had a discussion with my community medicine colleague, Dr. Asma. She told that autoimmune disease can worsen following vaccination. Live attenuated vaccine like MMR, polio, chickenpox, BCG are contraindicated in active connective tissue disease, but inactivated vaccines are safe. Effectiveness of vaccine is less in patients taking steroids. This is applicable to COVID vaccine also. The cell culture vaccines are safe in pregnancy. Immunosuppressed patients and patients on steroids require double the usual dose of anti-rabies vaccine. And the patient on steroids needs an additional booster dose. So usually we give 1 ml. Here instead we have given 2 ml. And usual dose is 5 injections, 0, 3, 7, 14, and 28 days. She was given an additional booster at 90th day. And after the 6 doses of human diploid cell vaccine, she tolerated it very well. There was no flare of disease activity. The patient was asymptomatic after vaccination and she was found to be more confident than her doctors. Both the obstetrician and myself were little afraid. She had an ultrasound. The fetal growth was 32 weeks of gestation.
Dr. Binoy,
No IUG. Right.
short because of lack of time.
Yeah. So she had a normal delivery and nothing. No problem. This is the third child. This is the first child with complete heart block. This is the child with neonatal cutaneous lupus, and this is the normal child. I think I can skip all these slides. These are some of the other cases which I want to skip. So the take-home messages are: pregnancy in patients with rheumatic disease requires a carefully monitored, coordinated approach. Rheumatoid arthritis improved during pregnancy, while flare-ups are common in SLE, progressive systemic sclerosis, and vasculitis. All autoimmune rheumatic diseases may worsen after delivery. A planned pregnancy after control of disease activity markedly improve the pregnancy outcome. Renal involvement, pulmonary hypertension, cardiac dysfunction, antiphospholipid antibody, and uncontrolled hypertension are important red flag signs. Avoid NSAIDs as far as possible. Don't stop disease-modifying drugs, especially hydroxychloroquine, sulfasalazine, azathioprine, without a proper advice. Disease-modifying may be chosen with extreme care. Low-dose prednisolone is relatively safe, and a teamwork between the obstetrician, the physician, the rheumatologist, and the neonatologist are essential for the successful pregnancy outcome. Thank you for the patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Binoy, for the excellent presentation. It was very clear, and I think that is why not much of questions are in the chat box. And moreover, almost all the questions that we wanted to ask you are already covered by you, and you have given the two cases. The discussion was very good. Thank you, Dr. Binay. For constraints of time, I'm not taking any of the questions from the chat box also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.